My name is Dr. Karlie Intlekofer, and it is my pleasure to talk to you today about some of the latest research, a blending of science and story behind how you can help your members build mental resilience and why the gym is actually key for this process. And throughout this, I will be peppering it with some data from recent studies just to drive the point home that none of this is just my opinion. Instead, it's based on the evidence, the literature and the research out there. And usually that research gets out between 5 to 10 years before the general public pick it up in blogs, etc. Although we're starting to see that timeline is truncated. All right, so let's go ahead and begin. Again, it's about building mental resilience in the health club environment. And if you're curious what I'm talking about with mental resilience, I think it's helpful to think about stress. Stress oftentimes gets a very bad rap. A lot of people want to avoid it, reduce it as much as possible. We all know that stress is a part of life, that stress is going to happen whether we want it or not. And we all know that the gym environment holds some keys to unlock that stress problem that we are all facing. So I do want to start with just an operational definition to get us all on the same page. What do I mean when I'm talking about stress? I'm talking about a highly individual experience. This is a subjective thing. What's stressful to me may not be stressful to you, and vice versa. Everyone categorizes what's stressful in their life differently, but most people say that stress is the reason they worry. Importantly, again, it's perceptual. It differs based on the person, the time of day, what they ate, have they slept well. It differs all the time based on many individual factors. But it is a perception that events are beyond your control. And I like this definition because it gives us some clues about advantages that gym goers have. They have a place where they can exert some control over what they choose to do, what equipment they choose to try, the people they choose to engage with, all of that increasing their locus of control. And it's aversive for a reason. Why does stress feel bad when it is prolonged or very severe? Why does it feel bad inside? It's a signal to us that we are under threat, that there's some danger that could potentially cause pain, tissue damage, irreparable harm. So it is trying to tell us something. The problem becomes when we use this signal as a reason to shut down, to do nothing, to socially isolate, because of course that's the safest, right? At home, feet up, scrolling with our devices in front of us. That's a safe, relatively safe place to be from the standpoint of someone who's feeling stressed. And the issue really is that what we're seeing, particularly in the US, but also globally, is that there is a rise of people's perceived stress. If we take a look over here, we can tell a lot of people are really redlining it when it comes to feeling stress. And stress is not necessarily a problem to be solved, but it's something to learn how to deal with, to cope with, to work around, and to learn what you personally need to deal with stress. So whether you're here as a fitness industry leader, as someone who's looking to staff a new gym, or if you're here as a personal trainer or a group exercise instructor, stress is something we all deal with, and it's a major reason why people are coming to fitness clubs. They are joining gyms. They are trying to take that first proactive step to get themselves out of that stressed state of mind. I want to take this opportunity, of course, to introduce Matrix brand ambassador Rick Muhr, and he is no stranger to stress and pain. He's actually done quite a lot, especially in the coaching domain, for decades, helping athletes and novices alike to develop stress coping strategies that work for top performance.
Thank you, Karlie. It's great to be here. I'm very proud to be associated with Matrix Fitness. As Karlie said, I've been a coach for 27 years. I live in Boston. I've coached over 20,000 runners for the Boston Marathon, which is coming up on April 17th. Does anyone here happen to be running it? There will be 35,000 people. That's a stressful day for me because I'll have 412 runners there. So my background is I've been a marathon runner for 45 years. 2:33 is my personal best. I've run 32 marathons, ranked 5th in the United States at 100 kilometers. And so I have decades. Thank you. So I have decades of taking care of myself. And I have devoted over 45 years to just improving my performance. And not once did I ever think that that time would possibly someday save my life. Not only once, but twice.
So I want to get back to this prevalence issue because I am a research scientist, I'm a neuroscientist by training, and I'm always reading the stats and the data to try to get a sense about what are the trends that are coming up, what are the things that are no longer important to the fitness consumer, and how can we help people get the exercise motivation they need, gain the self-confidence that they need to step foot in a gym for maybe the first time, or maybe because they're returning. So this prevalence issue is a big deal. It's a big deal because we've hit historic highs for something that we should not be proud of as a nation. Now, this is data based out of the US, but there is similar data coming from other countries. So it's not just the US that's struggling with stress right now. But this is pretty shocking. What the American Psychological Association did is a big series of surveys across Americans. And what they found is that the percentage of men and women who agree with this statement, most days I am completely overwhelmed by stress, is higher than ever. The data show that it's most individuals between 18 and 34 agree with this statement. Most of them. And it's almost half of 35 to 44-year-olds. Luckily, we see that stress perception tends to decrease over time as we get older. But I should mention that these are just averages. So when you actually look at the survey data, the responses are all over the place. It's just that on average, we see extremely high levels of stress perception among the American populace. Now, part of this might be a good thing because we are destigmatizing mental health challenges. So people are more comfortable saying, I'm having a problem than ever before. So maybe that's part of it. But I still think that this points to a need for us to address stress. And I think that gym environments have some huge advantages for doing that. And again, because of my background, I can't resist sharing with you that regular exercise can reinstate the feel-good brain chemicals, the exact same slew of neurotransmitters that are depleted by chronic stress and chronic pain. 1-to-1, we're talking the exact same molecules here, and I'm not going to bore you with all those acronyms, but trust me, it's real, it's true, it's out there, and the medical students of today are being trained in a very different way than they were even 20 years ago when it comes to things like stress, inflammation, chronic pain, etc. So we know that folks are looking for meds to help cope with stress-related mood disorders, and this isn't a hit against any psychiatric-related meds because we need those. That's part of how people get back on track. It's part of how they navigate severe mental illness. But we know that in the US, which has the highest rates for psychiatric med use, like by far, because we advertise direct to consumer, in the US, about 13% are currently using benzodiazepines. This is a class of drug that helps us cope with anxiety. Some of us in the room are on it right now. A lot of public speakers take it just for public speaking days. I'm not presently on it, but it's been suggested from other public speakers that I get on them. And we know that about 11% are using antidepressants. Now, I took data from this widespread survey, but I included data from folks who maybe are a little young to be entering the gym space. But I wanted to share it with you because these are your future consumers. And what do we know about them? Well, for better or for worse, they are much more comfortable talking about their mental health struggles, and they are on more medications than ever before. And the messaging around how good exercise is for your brain and for stress is changing at all levels. So these are folks who will be entering the gym spaces, if not within the next couple of years, within the decade afterwards. What we see here is antidepressant uses is extremely high. It's a very high percentage of Americans who take these every day. And like I said, that's not a negative. In a way, that's a positive because it means that people they're willing to take a proactive step to be able to counter some of these really frustrating and debilitating symptoms. So again, it's not a negative. We need these meds, but it's just a sign that there's a lot of people who are suffering. Now that 11% is across the board here for 13 to 65-year-olds. We see the numbers really fall off as we get to more advanced age for antidepressant use, but it's still out there. And these are difficult meds to transition off of. Exercise can help with that for those who are interested. So the big deal about stress is not that it exists, it's that our coping methods when we're under stress can either help or hinder the stress response. What I mean is, if you feel stressed, and I want you to think about this, imagine it's a Friday, you've had a really hard week, maybe there was a car accident, maybe your kid was involved in something, maybe you had a tough phone call or you're experiencing grief or loss. What do you do on that Friday if you don't have to work on the weekend? What do you do? Because most Americans will choose something that helps them get that stress off their mind. But in doing so, in reaching for something that changes their mood state, they may be doing something that's really just delaying taking action, denying what's going on in the body, or distracting them. Wine, cannabis, a lot of these things come to mind, right? There are ways that we moderate our mood. I did a lot of caffeine this morning to help myself moderate my mood. So there's all kinds of drugs that we are involved with to help moderate our mood. And we know that it works. I know when I have that cup of coffee or two that I'm going to feel more alert and I'm going to feel better afterwards. It's part of my routine. But another routine that's becoming more common, and I think social media may not necessarily help us avoid this one, is catastrophizing. This is the experience of having repetitive negative thoughts coupled with thoughts of being helpless. You might know someone who does this out loud. It's common for women in particular to vent to each other in ways that actually catastrophize their experience of stress and pain. I'm not throwing women under the bus, it's just I read a lot of papers, so they tend to have higher prevalence of this. This is going to amplify and prolong that chronic pain event or that chronic stress event. It can literally make it worse, but it's hard to change out of this behavior once it's an established habit. Ideally though, and this is a lot of the people who are walking through your doors, ideally we're able to take action. If an individual is empowered, they can accept reality for what it is. They can live in the present moment and try to do something to help them feel better that doesn't have a negative health consequence. And the big key here is that they're willing to adjust what they're doing when they realize something is no longer serving them. This is very difficult to do. It means I recognize that this is a habit I have, and I recognize I don't want to be aligned with that anymore. I don't want that part of my life anymore, and I need something different. That something different can be a class. It can be going to a workout session with a personal trainer. It can be going to something new in the club environment. And this is what we're actually seeing works the best. It's taking action in a way that doesn't deny or delay experiencing that feeling of stress or chronic pain. So when you think about that individual walking into your gym, there's a couple of things we need to keep in mind. Those gunners out there who are focused on physical performance probably already know that there's going to be a cycle of stress and recovery involved in their pathway to meeting their fitness potential. They probably already know if they are elite, if they are an experienced athlete, if they have as many races under their belt as Rick does, they already know that it's going to be hard and they need time to recover, and it's going to be hard and they need time to recover. The problem with workday stress or marital stress, relationship stress, grief and loss, is that we don't always make the connection that the cycle of stress is pretty natural because we never fully recover. We don't shift out of that stressed mindset because the habits we're engaged in aren't really serving us. That bottle of wine on a Friday night sounds really good to me if I'm having a really stressed week. I'm not going to lie, it sounds really good to me. But what are the long-term consequences if that becomes my habit? And by the way, as I've shared with some people before, during COVID, I discovered a love for wine that I did not actually have before COVID. So I'm speaking from experience that a couple of glasses can soon become an issue that you need to then step back from. And that's not easy. I like to substitute a habit that I'm trying to get rid of with something that I like more of. So maybe instead of having my friends over for some wine, maybe they come over and we start a yoga tape and they can do as much or as little as they want. And they can drink wine and do yoga, but I'm at least finding a way to shift out of that pattern and eventually to morning yoga, which I've successfully gotten myself to do at this point. Now, we're talking about top athletic performance, but the truth is that mental resilience for all is developed by these cycles of stress and recovery. And what we can do to help the new fitness consumers is have them see the gym as not only a place for physical stress, because I'm being honest, that's part of what we do when we're in there, but also a place for recovery. And I know that the word recovery is sometimes mixed up with substance use disorder, right? But I'm talking about feeling vitality, feeling that you've replenished your energy sources, feeling that you're coping with stress in a healthy way. I'm not talking about the substance use recovery addiction cycle, although that does play into this topic for sure.
Thank you. So this was a recent picture after my recovery. So I wanted to just share with you a little bit of information about what happened to me less than 18 months ago. And the stress and recovery that Dr. Karlie talks about really resonates with me because all those years of training for a marathon not only prepared me to run fast marathons, but it prepared me to actually confront, handle this accident that I had on October 3rd, 2021, less than 18 months ago. The only remnants that I have of this horrific accident is my voice hasn't fully returned, but I'm hoping that someday it will. My wife and children are hoping that it won't. But on October 3rd, 2021, I was out for a 100-mile bike ride. I'm also a cyclist. I was about 38 miles into the ride. My wife was with me and 3 friends. I live in the Boston area, so I was in the Blackstone Valley of Massachusetts. Very, very beautiful on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Very little traffic. And I was charging down a hill at 38 miles an hour. I can't ride that fast on the flats. I typically don't let the facts get in the way of a good story, but I feel compelled to tell the truth here. And there was a church on my right-hand side. And I'm an endurance motorcyclist, and I'm very hypersensitive about cars that are coming toward me, turning left in front of me. I look for classic signs. They're inching over the center line. They're not stopped. Their wheels are turned. This car gave me no indication. And at the last possible moment, this 80-year-old woman just going to church turned right in front of me and hit me head on. So some of the injuries that I sustained were, I had a concussion, a collapsed lung, a broken clavicle, 10 broken ribs, 4 compression fractures, a dislocated shoulder, a shattered humerus bone, and countless abrasions. And I was reminiscing as I was lying on the highway. I looked at my knee, which hit her headlight and split it wide open. I knew at that moment my life would never be the same. As a competitive runner, I knew at that moment that I would never compete again, that it was going to be very, very difficult. So those decades of training, preparing for the marathon, the 100K, the 100-mile runs, the 24-hour runs came into play. And I never imagined it. I had to accept the reality of my situation at that point. And I was literally fighting for my life. I was in intensive care for 2 weeks. I was in trauma for 3 weeks. I was then transferred to Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital in Boston for 2 weeks. And then I began my journey back. As soon as I was released from the hospital within 2 weeks, I was diagnosed with kidney cancer. And thankfully, I went to Dana-Farber Cancer Institute in Boston, and my cancer surgeon said, "Rick, let me make one thing perfectly clear. If you did not have this accident, kidney cancer would have taken your life." It was an incidental finding. When I was in trauma intensive care, they took so many images from CAT scans, CT scans, MRIs, X-rays. They discovered a 4-centimeter heterogeneous lesion on the top of my kidney. So the day after I was diagnosed, thankfully I have a lot of connections in the medical community. I was able to go to Dana-Farber the next day. And I walked in the room and the surgeon said, "You're not Rick Muhr." And I was taken aback by that. He said, "I've been reviewing Rick Muhr's medical records for the past 2 hours, and I was surprised that Rick Muhr could even make this appointment. And if he did, he would definitely be in a wheelchair. And I said proudly, I am Rick Muhr. And when I sat down with him and my wife, he said, Rick, I'm going to make 2 promises to you. And this is what he said. Number 1, you are going to die. Complete silence. I didn't want to hear that. He said the second thing, it's not going to be from kidney cancer. So I had the Boston Marathon coming up in about 6 weeks. And I said, I want to get this taken care of as quickly as possible. I really didn't want chemotherapy. I didn't want radiation, but I did want to be cancer-free. So he jumped me to the front of the line. Within 3 weeks, I had cancer surgery. 3.5 hours later, he called my wife and said, everything went great. Rick is cancer-free on that day. Thank you. So what I learned, and I hope you'll remember this, I hope you'll take it to heart, and I'm sure some, if not many of you in this room have more compelling stories than mine, but I just want to share with you one of the valuable lessons that I learned, and I would say this about all of you. Each one of you has the ability to dig deep in these trying times. We all have the ability to dig so deep within ourselves to find the strength and the courage to face whatever we're confronted with. We have these embers that just lie dormant within us. And they lie dormant, thankfully, for most of our lives as we live lives of comfort and convenience. But those embers can ignite into a raging fire of strength during your darkest hours. And I found that out. And it wasn't because I was a marathoner, that I could run fast. It was because I dedicated years, decades, to improving my athletic performance, my mental strength. And as I emerged from that tragedy, so grateful. But I learned that I had mental health resilience in spades. And we all do, and we live in that world. We foster that in our members and everyone we come in contact with.
I want to tell you a little bit about the mechanism here, and I know that on the heels of that level of inspiration, this may seem relatively dry, but the research is absolutely compelling, and it's recent. We didn't know this 20 years ago. As we learn more and more about the brain, we're aware that there are certain centers that control certain functions, and some of you might be aware of executive function. That's the front part of your brain, the part that helps you get things done, the part that helps you get to this room and navigate, even though you probably had countless opportunities to stray, to pick up your cell phone and check your emails instead, to catch up with someone instead. But instead, you got all the way here. Executive function was at play. And what we know is that when someone has chronic stress and pain, it lowers their drive or their ability to commit and complete long-term goals. And unfortunately, a lot of our long-term goals are related to health. We want to live healthier lives. So this includes the habits that are tough, the habit of getting yourself to the gym, of making it to that class, of staying accountable to yourself, your personal trainer, your group exercise instructor, and whoever else you see normally when you get to the gym. But what we know is that in folks who have stress and pain, which unfortunately, like I told you, is a lot of people, this part of the brain is inhibited. That's right, it's inhibited. If I put you in a brain scanner, I can see that there's less electrical activity if you're someone who says, I am overwhelmed by pain or stress every day. So centers of the brain, you probably know about threat detection in the amygdala, are able to talk to the frontal lobes and direct our brain activity elsewhere. And where does the brain activity get directed to? Well, it's not to the resist impulses circuits. It's not to the focus and get it done circuits. We redirect our brain focus to the comfort of our oldest habits. Many of these are habits that no longer serve us. I shared with you my love of wine, and I still love it. But I have learned that regardless of what's happening in my life, I have to be careful of this trap, because what happens is that threats impair the frontal lobe. They impair that executive function in ways that drive us to seek the comfort of the easy habits, the habits that take very little effort to enact. These include things like running through the drive-thru, because who has time to cook? Getting in front of the TV or a screen because it's comforting, it takes over for you, you don't have to do too much original cognitive thought, and scrolling social media, which can have good aspects that add to your life, but in excess can be a problem. So this is a difficulty, and this is a challenge for all of us because we want to recruit those members. We want those members to stay. We want them to make their gym visits that they intended to make. And the truth is that there's more and more research about chronic stress and how it recruits those old habit and, yes, addiction-related neurocircuitries. These are papers from the last couple of years that are really showcasing what we know to date. Beyond pain, how we make decision-making deficits in those with chronic pain. Why does this happen? Again, it's because that amygdala shuts down our ability to follow through. But some really interesting findings have just come about in the last couple of years, and they've been replicated, which I love it when that happens. What we've learned is that by helping us change our mind, by helping us with neuroplasticity where we make new connections, exercise quiets that part of the brain that signals for threat detection. So even if the stressor is identical from one day to the next, if you get a workout in, a movement session in, a trip to the gym where you see familiar faces, your perception of threat goes down. Your perception of stress goes down. Same situation the next day. But because you took on your own voluntary physical challenge or motivational challenge to get to the gym, it gets a tiny bit easier the next day. And over time, we see that the gym can be part of the recovery from chronic stress. These two studies reinforce that this stress-induced change to behavioral decisions is completely reversible. I just have the word reversible outlined there because how is it reversible? Neuroplasticity. What benefits neuroplasticity? Exercise. So exercise is a route to changing your mind. Now, some people have it better than others because what if you already have that habit, that old habit from high school when you were a high school athlete, or maybe even from college when you were a college athlete? But some people don't have that exercise habit at all in their repertoire. And so we need to have some sort of embracing of those newcomers and make sure they know that they don't have to kill themselves in the gym to get a benefit of stress relief. And this was a paper that to me is a landmark study. I am in contact with the author. He knows it's a landmark study. Why aren't there blogs about this? Why doesn't everybody know about this? Because it's tough. It takes a while. Like I said, there's a delay from when it's published to when everybody knows about it. But I'm telling you today because I want you as leaders in this industry to spread the word. In this study, I'll tell you what they did. They took men who were about 63 years old on average, and they exposed them, some of them were a control group, to 8 weeks of regular gym visits. What does that mean? They had to be in the gym environment for 30 to 45 minutes, 3 times a week, so they were hitting kind of that general exercise guideline. But before they started this exercise quest, they took a look at their blood flow throughout the brain. They did some brain scans. They did some cognitive testing. They wanted to see their executive functions. And this group that published this is well known for their studies in executive functions. And what they found is that in 8 weeks, we saw way more blood flow to a certain part of the brain that's critical for focus and goal-driven behavior. So this is basically showing us that we get a lot more blood flow to the exact part of the brain that helps us follow through with healthy intentions, that helps us stay on track, that helps us put our phone down when the email ding keeps going, which helps us pay attention. If we have remote work or other obligations, we have to pay attention, right? This part of the brain is enhanced by 30% in terms of blood flow. So the cerebrovascular blood flow goes up, and then we have better executive function as a result. Now, I care about blood flow to the brain. I have people in my family who's had strokes. I have people in my family who are healing from surgeries right now that involve their eyes and their brain. So I think about blood flow all the time. But I'm sure very few of you are thinking about blood flow as much as I am, so who cares? The reason why it matters is because when you do the actual testing, it's not just that the structure changes in the brain, more blood flow, better blood supply. It's that the function of the brain changes. It's that when we take these exact same 60-year-old men and we give them tests for how quickly they can respond, how impulsive they are, how accurate their responses are, they have faster thinking, more clear thinking, and they report feeling better about their ability to get things done. This is important because they're able to finally follow through on many of their healthy intentions, and exercise helped get them there. Exercise wasn't just correlated with improved health, it causes improved health. It's not a correlation, it's not an association, it causes your brain to change in ways that make you more powerful at exerting your will and following through on what's important to you. So I think that this is really important stuff. I had the great pleasure of unveiling this in a talk a year ago, but it still is extremely relevant and rarely discussed. Now, I'm focusing a lot on the brain. I care about the brain, I can't help it, but here's the problem. If we look at the gym environment, all of these things happen for the solo exerciser, but the gym environment's got some advantages that someone going out for a run on their own isn't going to have. And that is the social dimension of fitness. Social, because we are very social creatures. And you may not notice if you're really focused on your screens, but we really are quite social. And it's that social environment that helps us become the best version of ourselves. And it's a big key to why the gym environment brings us value.
This is one of the groups that I'm training for, the Boston Marathon. And I find that this connection to group is like the myofascia, the connective tissue for mental health resilience. From the first day that they come together, many of them don't even know one another. I am very proud to say some of them became engaged, got married, had children. I still haven't been able to convince them to name their son Rick, but the dynamic, the human connection that people feel is so important. And in my own recovery, I would have to say that I deserve very little credit for my recovery. It was all the people who helped me, the trauma surgeons, the orthopedic surgeons, the nurse practitioners, the nurses, the personal care assistants, and my runners gave me the motivation that I needed to fight, to come back, to run again. I was on my back for 7 weeks. That first walk at 63 years old was amazing. It was so liberating. It was better than all 32 marathons that I've run combined. To be able to take that one step and just move. Movement is empowerment. And when I'm with these people, the emails, the texts, the GoFundMe page that went to 50,000 in one day because of these people, the connections that I felt to them, they are the reasons why I survived. And so one of the things that I really like about the Marathon Coalition is that I created this environment empowerment and inspiration, but it's the people and their connections that define what the Marathon Coalition is about. To be able to bring a diverse group of people together around one common cause, and that's to improve our fitness, to improve our mental health, can never be discounted.
I do want to talk about the role of environment related specifically to gyms, because it seems that now is maybe the most important time to really support that social fabric. Now, this is going to be a stat that's from the US, but it's similar to other countries. And what it shows us is that friendlessness is on the rise. If we ask people, do you have any close friends? 0, 1 to 3, 4 to 6, 6 or more. What we've been seeing is a progressive decline in friendships, particularly close friendships. So in 1990, it was 1 out of every 33 Americans said they had no friends. They were friendless. But fast forward to 2021, and now it's 1 in 8. So despite being connected to more people than ever by our devices, we feel less close to others. This makes it really easy to divide us. This makes it really easy to push outrage-based headlines. It makes it easy because you already have a ton of people who don't feel that humanity is on their side, who don't feel they have a group they can identify with, who don't feel a strong sense of community. And that's part of the advantage of being part of a gym. And we know that the top loneliness protective factor is just the quality of your daily interactions. This includes the really seemingly inconsequential interactions. Talking with someone when you're pumping your gas, stopping by someone who's at the staff, who's front desk, who may just be watching you scan your card. What is the quality of those interactions? All of it matters, especially if you're in the group who considers themselves to have no close friends. Then the inconsequential actually becomes quite telling for how you're going to view your social life that day. And I do want to mention that there's evidence in 2017, some work came out that showed that our hormonal responses to interacting with others is very different, whether we are face-to-face, whether we hear their voice on the phone, or whether we receive a text message from them. It doesn't mean we can't still bond like always. It just means that when I look you in the eye and I have a conversation with you, it leaves a different impression on me. And you can measure it in my blood. And the hormone that is released, does anyone know what that bonding hormone is called? Oxytocin. So cool that hormones are now being well known. As like a neuroendocrinologist, I'm like such a geek for it. But that hormone is just not released at all in a text message, even if it's your mom. Even if it's your mom. So at the very least, I hope you pick up the phone. I hope you FaceTime, although I will say in person's better than FaceTime. I hope that you reinvigorate this drive to actually make social connections. And at the gym, this happens pretty naturally. Yes, there's always going to be someone at the gym who does not really want to interact and is there to do their own thing. And there's nothing wrong with that, because there's other types of relationships at the gym, including parasocial relationships. This is a relationship that I've had many times where you are inspired by someone. They may not even know you exist. But I can tell you the individuals, I can't tell you their names because I didn't get to know them, who made incredible fitness gains or turned something around or started all of a sudden showing me incredible form on whatever that lift was. Throughout all the gyms I've been at, I have recognized those individuals. You've seen them too. You've been inspired too. I know you have. And maybe you had more guts than me and went and chatted them up, but I only remember what they did, what they looked like, etc. The gym is a place where we can make these connections, even if it's a parasocial connection, like I said. And that all adds to a feeling of sense of community. And that's huge. Where are we going to get that? Synagogue and church attendance is at historic lows. There are fewer meeting places than ever before. I grew up going to the mall as a teenager in the early 90s. That was like a place we could meet up. That's not as much of a meetup place now as it used to be, at least in most places. And again, what you gain from that is the ability to be inspired, like I am by Rick's story, like I am from the people who show up at the gym and bring their A game. We gain the wisdom of learning from their mistakes so we don't repeat them, and the appreciation for what our body can do. Group exercise, of course, has been long known to have huge adherence advantages. It's just hard to quit on the group. And it's even better if you can link people by shared interests in similar ages. And we know that social interactions are better in gyms that have overflow areas that are friendly to those interactions. And not every gym's got the space, okay? But the gyms that do and do it well have spaces for people to naturally migrate to after the group exercise class. They've got benches. They may even have juice bars, coffee, cafe, that sort of thing, to encourage the tight-knit bonds that form in that community. And if you don't have that coffee shop yourself, maybe there's a nearby coffee shop or cafe that you could try to get a small discount for. Advertising that gives people a jump-off point where they continue the conversation, where they can go be social and form stronger social bonds. And I have to tell you that the dollars and cents of this also makes a lot of sense for our industry, because if we look at the consumer value equation, in other words, what brings a fitness consumer into the gym, we see that they have a desire for shared experiences as one of their top selection criterion. Now, this data is provided by Murphy Research, and she did a great job. This is Sarah Marion's work. Dr. Sarah Marion, if you want to check out the whole thing, IHRSA did a great write-up at the end of January about this. So just Google Murphy and IHRSA. It's the top link that you'll get. And I have regraphed it, and there's some things in here I omitted. But of course, what do they care about? Convenient location. What else do they care about? The equipment that you have. And there's other things like it's safe environment, a clean environment. But if we look at all of these in dark orange, we see that they are suggesting that they want a shared experience. They want fitness sessions or classes that they can join, being with others. They want to be with friends or family. That's a direct endorsement of the statement. Be with like-minded people. And some of them are joining because they want to stay because there's a specific personal trainer there. Again, pointing to the value of relationships. So I did want to give you a brief theoretical framework that you can judge all of your business decisions by if you want to motivate exercise behavior. And it's 3 things. This was Deci and Ryan's self-determination theory, if you're curious where it comes from, but it's autonomy. Do you honor their sense of self? Do you honor that they're making an individual choice? Why is this valuable? Because these are your members who are making a choice to show up, and if they get to tell you something about themselves, if they get to tell you why they're choosing to make it to the gym, they are reinforcing their sense of autonomy. They are acting on their own, and they feel empowered by that. The second thing here would be competence. How is a gym visit helping your members? What are they gaining? Are they gaining something from it, like a skill? Now, of course, with fat loss, we oftentimes think about loss, but I have to admit, the motivation for fat loss is not as powerful as you might think from the literature. Don't get me wrong, everyone loves a before and after. But the literature is not that great about folks who are exercising just for weight loss, okay? It's much better to be gaining strength, to be gaining power, endurance, to be gaining more patience with your spouse or your loved ones. Those actually rank higher for intrinsic motivation than dropping a few pounds on the scale. Undoubtedly, a lot of your members want both. And then relatedness, and we've talked about the importance of this. How do you know that your members feel supported? If I ask you to prove it, what do you tell me? How do they know that they have similarities to others there? How do they know they share hobbies and foods? These are easy ones, softball. Please don't bring up politics or anything like that. But if you bring up some nice things that people can talk about, best restaurant for whatever type of food, and you actually get people interacting over these ideas, that's a nice way to stoke that flame for relatedness, for connection, for community. And you can celebrate your members in ways that make it a little easier to connect. I know I love gyms that show me what their personal trainers are into, give a little blurb about them, tell me about them, because now I know who's into that one type of lift that I love. Now I know who's into that type of food that I love. Does it really matter? I'm not going to ask that person to go get that food, but now I've got an icebreaker. So if I see them on the floor and introduce myself, hey, I heard that you love that band. I saw them last year, blah, blah, blah. So you want to give people ins to make it a little easier, because honestly, a lot of people, especially trending younger, are a little bit socially apprehensive. If your marketing approaches, if your gym is set up to honor all 3 of these things, this is a nice framework that you can be sure will enhance their intrinsic motivation to get a workout in or to visit the gym. And lastly, I did want to mention stress management. Okay. This was one of the bigger surprises for me, dipping my toe in the research here, trying to figure out what are the exact things that we need to feel better after a workout. It's 10 minutes. We need 10 minutes of getting our heart rate elevated. And I would have thought, okay, yeah, but you have to at least hit moderate intensity. No, you don't. The research shows you can hit low intensity, and in 10 minutes, you feel better. So don't get me wrong, I love high intensity interval training. I love Sprint 8. I love group exercise classes that get me sweating, pushing harder than I normally would. But I think as an industry, we need to be open to the possibility that some folks are very intimidated by that. And that may be a reason why they don't go to the gym. I have an aunt who's got a gym membership because she gets an insurance reimbursement, who doesn't go because she does not feel she's in shape enough to go to the gym. And she's embarrassed that if she goes and she leaves before other people are even done with their warm-up, that they're gonna notice. They probably won't notice, but who cares even if they did? She's missing out on this stress relief component, and she's someone who could benefit more than almost anyone else I know. So I think our messaging needs to say, short workouts are okay, easier, lighter workouts are okay. And if you're an elite athlete, you know that there are gonna be days when you need a light workout, not a heavy, heavy workout. It's not for everyone, not for all age groups, all conditions, etc. So that the gym can be a place for stress recovery, not just to get an impactful experience. And ask yourself, does everyone on your team know how to advise for this? If you are an owner and you know what you want them to say, write it in an email, send it to them every quarter. Hey, just a quick reminder, if someone's coming in and they look like or are asking for stress relief, here's some things I would suggest. Here's some exercise modalities that are low impact, that are joint friendly, that are age friendly, whatever the terms you want. If you want them to say certain words and you're a leader, Write out the words you want them to say. And if you want them to actually be good at it, test them. Leave it to the ex-teacher to ask for a test, right? But honestly, just ask them, hey, what would you say to blah, blah, blah? Quiz them, because it's hard the first time you give advice about something you don't personally follow yourself or don't know much about, or if it's a boss, interaction, it can be a little nerve-wracking. Ask them. Make them prove it to you that they can provide good guidance for someone who needs a lighter version of a workout or a more mellow version of a workout, or wants to go to a class that is mostly about gentle stretching or gentle yoga or foam rolling or breathing or breath work, meditation, etc. You should know what it is that you guys offer that's exceptional for stress relief, and it doesn't have to be a long, enduring thing. Let's talk about positive messages. Volunteer opportunities are another way for you to, in a very easy way, show that you care about your community. Having those posted somewhere, even if it's online, sends people the message that you care. You can also train for a cause. I know the Breast Cancer Foundation has a lot of races, and this is something fun to rally everyone around. You can also highlight health awareness by month. A lot of people know February in the US is Heart Month, so there's usually pushes for cardio challenges, etc. during that month. Just different ways you can show the community that you care. And of course, let's not forget the Member Spotlight. The Member Spotlight is a great opportunity for you to showcase the talent and the people who are overcoming great difficulties within your own population. Do you have anything to add, Rick, as an exceptional Member Spotlight candidate, I'd say?
Yes. Can everyone still hear me? I just want to say a couple things before we conclude. I do think in terms of the spirit of building a community, profiling a member is really important, especially those members who have overcome things. I do think it brings mental health resilience to the forefront. It raises the comfort level of people who have been struggling. It could be anything, overcoming cancer, an addiction. It could be absolutely anything. And I think you'll find that other people, when they read those, will come to you and they'll vote for another member to be profiled. I really just think it's the gateway for uniting people. And really, the bottom line is we are in the business of changing lives. We're spending our lives trying to help people achieve the best version of themselves. And so as I looked around the room, I was reminded of one of my favorite quotes from the great American anthropologist, Margaret Mead. And I think of you when I think of this. And she said, "Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has." And you are changing lives, so I hope you find comfort in that, and I hope you take considerable pride in that. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "To know that just one life has improved because you have lived, that is to have succeeded. And by that measure, you are all a considerable success." So thank you.
So as we wrap up, just briefly, we're all on the same page here. We know that the gym environment is important for this. It's a place where we can come together and meet others. People who are new to your city can knit themselves into the fabric of your community. And we know that that's where you develop healthy stress coping skills so that you don't rely on those old skills that maybe weren't serving you. It really makes a huge difference here because ultimately with healthy stress coping skills, you can improve physical and mental health through gym visits. More and more people are looking at gym visits for stress relief. So as business owners, as fitness professionals, we need the right messaging to welcome them with open arms when they first make those nervous steps to get into your facility. And we know that that is a place where they can find social connection. And I know there's a lot of people who are in there solo exercising, but there's also a lot of relationships being built at the same time. All of this comes together, and that is what's driving this mental resilience advantage. And you are all part of this. So I hope that you continue to move forward and lead by example and to elevate that member experience by showcasing the exceptional individuals that you see day in, day out in your facility. And with that, I've opened up for any questions, and thank you for your attention today.